Hey guys, welcome back to our VCP 6.5 ICM hands-on training. This is lab 16 in our series. In this lab, we'll go ahead and work with the VMware's virtual app. So this is the agenda that we plan to cover. We'll go ahead and create a virtual app, then we'll see how we can power on and power off a virtual app, and then we'll go ahead and delete a virtual app. But just to quickly give you an idea about virtual app, think of a virtual app as a kind of a container, and within this container we can hold multiple your virtual machines as a single group. That means on this single group we can go ahead and assign or do some kind of a resource reservation or resource control, as well as we can manage the virtual machines inside the app, within this app or within this virtual container as a single object. So the vApp is really comes handy when you are working with a multi-tiered application. I'll give you an example of a multi-tiered application. You have a multi-tiered application where you have an instance of a load balancer. Behind the load balancer you have your app server setting, and behind the app server there is a database server. So the DB is really used by the app server, and app server is being used by your load balancer. That means when the user is trying to access anything, they are really hitting your load balancer first, followed by the application server and the DB server. So in that case, now we can put all those three machines together and make a virtual container or a vApp, and that way we can control the ordering of these VMs when we are powering them down or powering them on. Because we don't want to be giving access to our website unless the database server has started. After starting the database server, we ideally want to have our app server come up first before our load balancer really comes up. So we can really dictate the order in the which we want this virtual machine to become online and go offline at the same time. Similarly, when you want to power them off, you want to power them off in a certain order. You don't want to serve the user when the database is going down. So you certainly want to take off your load balancer first. That way you are cutting the access of the user to your application, and then probably the application server followed by the DB server. So with that, let's go ahead and quickly jump onto the hands-on and quickly take a look how we can go ahead and work with the virtual app. So creating virtual app is kind of pretty easy. So now we are logged on to the vSphere web client. Within the vSphere web client, we have a couple options. One of the options says global inventory list. So simply go ahead and click on global inventory list. Within the global inventory list, on the left hand side, there are a couple of the options, and one of the options here says vApps. So now let's just simply go ahead and click on vApps. When you click on the vApps, right now it says, okay, hey, we don't have any vApps into this environment. So that's okay. As I said, the vApp is kind of a container that would really hold your VMs. So now before that, let's go ahead and quickly create a couple of dummy VMs that we will go ahead and make a part of this virtual app. So I'll go back to the VM and templates pretty quick, and within the dev VMs, let's go ahead and create a new virtual machine. We will call this virtual machine, and let's go ahead and create a new virtual machine. Let's call that virtual machine as call it load balancer LB, load balancer VM. And now simply go ahead and hit next here. Let's say we want to have this to be on 45. Go ahead and specify some of the other details. Select the LUN. In this case, we'll go ahead and say the LUN being 1, ESX 6.5, and the OS family is okay. Let's go ahead and select 64 Windows. In terms of the hardware, because we are just testing, so we don't need a lot of resources. So I would just simply go ahead and create a 8 gig of the hard drive and 2 gig of the memory. The rest of the thing looks good. Just simply go ahead and hit here next, and just go ahead and simply click finish. Now we just went ahead and created our first VM. I'm just going to go ahead and make a clone of this VM pretty quick. So right click on the VM, and there is an option that says clone, and I will say clone to a virtual machine. Now let's call your web VM. Call it as a web VM. So within DC1, we want to locate this onto the dev VMs. Same on 45. No change. So let's move it also this to the LUN1. Click next here. We're not doing any customization or anything. I'm just quickly creating a couple of VMs. So let's go ahead and done that. So we have a web VM being got created. Now let's go ahead and create our last VM. We'll call it as a database VM. Now let's go ahead and select again the location being a dev VM. Go through the process pretty quick. Select your LUN. No customization, and simply go ahead and. So we went ahead and created a couple of VMs here. There's a web VM, there's load balancer VM, and the DB VM. As I said, we will be working with a 3-tier application here. So now let's go back to the home and go under global inventory list. Come back under vApps, and now we can go ahead and create a new vApp, and again new vApp from library. That's another option from the content library. So now let's go ahead and simply click on a create new virtual app, and we'll have the new virtual app wizard being started. So in this, the first thing it says select a creation type. So definitely we are interested in creating a new virtual app. So simply go ahead and click here next. Now we are being presented with the destination. Select a destination for this virtual app. Where do we want this virtual machine or the virtual app to be located? So within this, we can go ahead and select a specific step, or within this one. Now let's go ahead and we will host that on same on 45. So now let's go ahead and simply select next here. Now we are being asked to specify a name for our vApp. So let me call the vApp our multi-tier application, and again we can specify where we want this vApp to go. So we can say dev vms1 in this case. In terms of the resource allocation, again, if you recall, we had worked in the previous lab with the resources. If you need to work with the resources, we can go ahead and do that. Let's say this is an important app for my environment, so I can go ahead and assign high number of CPU resources as well as the high number of memory resources. If you want to go ahead and make a reservation, we can go ahead and certainly do that. Now just simply go ahead and click next here and finish. So what we just did, we just went ahead and created our first vApp, and the name of that vApp is multi-tier app. And you can go to the summary page to take a look at some of the details into this particular one. Now it's time to move the newly created VMs inside this app and make them part of this container. So to do this, it's pretty simple. You can just do drag and drop, or you can use move to function. So I'll go ahead and do a drag and drop, and I will drag my DB VM to be part of my app. Let me go ahead and repeat the same thing for my load balancer VM. Last but not least, go ahead and repeat the same part with the web VM. So now we just made all of these VMs as a part of this virtual app container, and that's the reason if you take a look within the VM and template, we don't see any of our VMs, those VMs listed anymore, because now they are part of this container. And that's what we see. If you want to see those VMs in this container, just simply go ahead and click on your vApp and go to the summary. Now click on the summary tab to see some of the details about this vApp. And on the top of the screen, let's go into the VMs. If we go to the VMs under the virtual machine, it shows, okay, here there are 3 VMs which are part of this vApp, and using the same procedure we can go ahead and create this vApp. There is another thing, you can go ahead and create a vApp in advance, and when you are creating a VM, during that time we can also go ahead and select the destination being vApp. So either way you can go ahead and move the VMs within your vApp. Now once your vApp has these 3 VMs, now let's just go ahead and right click on your VM. So on this edit setting page, there are a couple things that we can go ahead and configure. Like in terms of the resources, we can go ahead and configure CPU resources, memory resources. If there are any IP allocation, that can be done too. Now let's go under the authoring part and take a look at the start order. So within the start order, you can see all of our 3 VMs are listed, and right now their order is kind of pretty random. We have the DB VM on the top, followed by the lab VM and then the web VM. But in our case, this is a 3-tier app, and we want to have, depending on the order, we like to have our database server to be powered on first. So on the priority, we can say, okay, hey, we need to have the DB to come up first, and we can delay what needs to be done and some of the other things also in terms of the shutdown. Once we have the DB server comes up, we would like to ideally have our web VM to come up second. So let's move that up and let's bring the load balancer down. On the web VM, we can say power on, and here we can go ahead and wait for how long do we want to wait for some of the things that we want to delay. So let's go ahead and maybe change this to, instead of 120, we can make it a 150. And we can also verify if the VMware tools are ready or not, and some of the other things. Now same thing for the lab VM. We can say, okay, hey, before you power on, let's wait for 200 seconds before you can go ahead and power on. Similar way, we can go ahead and configure any of the further settings. We can check for the VMware tools. So that's how we can really go ahead and arrange the order, and we can really specify the order in which the VMs needs to be powered on as well as the power off. When everything looks good, you can just simply go ahead and click on OK. Now all the changes have been applied to your vApp. Now if you recall, we discussed earlier, the vApp acts like as a container. So that means once I go ahead and power on my vApp container, it'll go ahead and power all of those VMs depending on the order that we had configured. So let's go ahead and try that. That's right, simply right click here, go to the power, and within the power there is an option that says power on. So go ahead and click on power on VM, and if you can see right now, the first VM that was powered on into this 3-tier app, it says a DB VM. And if you recall, that was the VM that we had configured as a first. Once the DB VM is powered on, we will going to go ahead and wait for 120 seconds before we can go ahead and power on the next VM. Next VM in this case is going to be the web VM, then followed by the load balancer VM. And after 120 seconds, you can see the second VM, that is a web VM that just got powered on. And you can take a look on the app. It kind of indicates, okay, hey, the first VM that was powered on was the DB VM, followed by now the web VM. Now the system is going to wait for another 200 seconds, 150 seconds or so that we had configured, and finally the load balancer VM will come up. And finally our lab VM was just got powered on. And at this stage, all of the 3 VMs are powered on and our vApp is fully powered on. So that's how we can really control the power on and power off of your multiple VMs, which are acting as a single container or single object. This feature is really helpful, as I kind of mentioned earlier, when you're working with multi-tiered application. So now once we have our vApp is powered on, again, you can simply go ahead and right click and power off your VMs because it's not fully up. That's the reason it's not allowing us to power it off. So maybe in a few seconds we'll be done, and then we will be able to successfully power off. Once we have the vApp powered off, we can, if you want to go ahead and delete the vApp, we can go ahead and select this option, delete from disk. That would go ahead and remove this vApp, but there is a caution that I want to provide here. If you are working in a production environment, if you want to remove the vApp and if you want to keep your virtual machine, you make sure you move those virtual machine out from your vApp first before you delete your vApp. If you don't remove the virtual machine from your vApp and you directly go ahead and delete your vApp, you will lose your virtual machines also. So now our vApp is fully up. As you can see, all the VMs are up and running and the task is just over. So if we need to power off our vApp, again we discussed, you can just simply go ahead and right click, go to power, and we can go ahead and do the power off, and just simply go ahead and click next, and you can see all of the 3 VMs just got shut down at the same time. Remember, during the authoring we had not configured any kind of settings or a timer for the shutdown, so you can go ahead and configure that, and that way the VMs can be brought down in a specific sequence, just like the way we brought them online. Now if we don't need the vApp anymore, we can just simply go ahead and right click and delete from disk. Deleting this vApp will remove VMs and resource pool from the inventory. So as I said, if you don't want to delete your VMs and if you just want to remove your vApp, make sure to move these VMs out of your vApp, and to do that you can just simply do a drag and drop or use the move to functionality and move them to a different place. So in this case these are dummy VMs we don't need, so I will just simply go ahead and right click here and I will go ahead and delete the vApp including the VMs. So delete from the disk and just simply go ahead and click next here. And that would go ahead and delete our vApp from the vCenter. That'll be all for this lab. I will see you guys in the next lab.